Oh, that's not bad. That's not good, but disclaimer to all those watching at home: if it goes out, I probably won't come back on. But everything, some of the things has already been mentioned as practices, and they're a little more explained here. And there's some things that are sort of prophetic, and they just sort of leave you hanging. So, and that's the first thing we see here. Chapter 12 is basically an instruction for the people in their coming days of worship. They're getting ready to cross over, and basically says, these are the statutes and rules that you will be careful to do in the land that the Lord, the God of your fathers, has given you to possess all the days that you live on the earth. You shall surely destroy all the places where the nations whom you shall dispossess serve their gods, on the high mountains, on the hills, and under every green tree. And it goes through and says, you'll tear down their altars, dash in pieces their pillars, burn their asherim with fire, chop down the carved images of their gods, destroy their names out of that place. You shall not worship the Lord your God in that way. You shall seek the place of the Lord your God will choose out, and all the tribes to put his name and make his habitation there. Now, the there he's talking about is the mystery, because he goes on and says, there you shall go, and there you shall bring your offerings, sacrifice your tithes. Later on, he said in verse 7, and there you shall eat before the Lord the God and rejoice. A lot of there, but it doesn't tell where there is. Now, God is saying that there will be one specific place for worship. But that's sort of flexible, because the first place for worship that they cross over is a place called Gilgal. And you cross the River Jordan from the country of Jordan today, and you come to a place called Gilgal. When they crossed over, they built an altar and they worshiped. Later on, when they subdue the whole land, they will set up the tabernacle at Shiloh, which is near Shechem. And Shechem was a big worship center for the pagans that were there before. And I was looking at that, and I thought, I was so disappointed that we didn't get to go there, because you have Jerusalem and Jericho. If we were coming down from Galilee on the Jordan River, if we had just gone over to Shechem, it's some beautiful ruins there. And Shechem is a place where the Hebrews built a fortress there and a temple. The Samaritans built their temple there. But then you go below Shechem, you come to Shiloh, where there's the ruins and the ground where they think the tabernacle set, and all this stuff. I thought, man, we missed a lot when we were in Israel. But then you go cruise right on down there, you go to Jericho. So, but to me, it's fascinating, because I'm really into history stuff. But these were places that they did worship. But God here is talking about Jerusalem, because that will be the chosen place. Takes him a while to get there, though. And David would, when he takes Jerusalem, he will declare it his city. And he wanted to build a temple there. And God said, I'm not going to let you build it. Your son will build it. And so Solomon built his temple there in Jerusalem. And that spot, and we talked about that last week, where I think that spot is not where they think it is. And most scholars now are coming to that understanding. So if they ever wanted to build a temple, which some say they will, and the Bible says they will, it would be possible to build it, because it won't even be near those mosques. Well, it'll be near, but anyway, they talk about that, and then it goes on, and you start getting into the dietary laws, which a lot of people think, well, that's just silly. It doesn't apply as much to us, and yet it could, particularly nowadays when everybody's so health conscious. Now think about it. This is roughly 3,000 years ago that these laws were given, dietary laws, and God says you can eat certain things, but don't eat other things, and whatever you do, don't eat just the blood from an animal. And right down here it says in verse 16, only you shall not eat the blood, you shall pour it on the earth like water, when you slaughter and eat meat. And he's saying basically is it's okay to slaughter and eat meat, but then later on he starts talking about sacrifices. Now let me go backwards for a second. And where'd it go? over in chapter 14 is the one that most people look at. And it says, you are the sons of the Lord your God. You shall not cut yourselves or make any baldness on your foreheads for the dead. That cut yourself goes along with Leviticus, where it says you not make tattoos as the pagans do. So there's the thing that we sort of fudged on. But I mean, I grew up, I had an uncle who was in the Navy, and he was a walking billboard for ships and stuff. But my dad didn't have any tattoos, or my mom didn't either. And they raised me. They said, you don't do this. The Bible says don't get a tattoo. And I actually never wanted a tattoo. I think I'm probably the only one in the world except for Debbie. I thought, it looks like it hurts, I try to avoid needles, and here they want to come at me with needles for an hour. I said, no, I'll just use a magic marker. And I was real good on those stick-on tattoos, where you had a bunny rabbit and stuff. But that today, it's hard to find somebody who's not wearing tattoos. Kids today, they get a tattoo, and I don't want to offend anybody. If you got a tattoo, it's okay, you can have what you want. But I've just always been curious why. And I've asked kids, I said, why'd you get a tattoo? Well, I just wanted one. I said, well, okay, but is there a reason for it? And occasionally you'll find somebody says, well, it's in honor of a relative that passed on. You'll have their mother's name or something. We ate at a restaurant for breakfast in the morning. Sweet little waitress came over, and I couldn't help but notice the tattoos all up and down her arm, and they were just things. It didn't seem to be just random stuff. And I had kids that I used to teach. I had a little girl from Korea. And she's the only person I ever seen with a tattoo that I thought, well, that's actually pretty. She had tattooed birds flying across her collarbone into her shoulder. And I thought, yeah, that's weird, but it's actually sort of pretty in a weird way. But nobody ever tells me why they want to tattoo themselves. It's like, well, I believe in body art. I said, I believe in art too. I do it on canvases. But God says don't do it. And his reason is it's a pagan practice. Now, I know kids today aren't doing it as a pagan practice. It's just like, ladies, you've got pierced ears. The Bible says you can't have that. It's a pagan practice, but you're okay. So there's a lot of things we sort of hedge. The scarring thing, though, was definitely a pagan practice, and many cultures today still do that. Africa in particular, they will create large scars on their bodies and stuff. And I've told you about Togo, where there were two tribes, the Ife and the Ewe. The language was slightly different, but I had an Ife. I always get it backwards, it's been so long, but I think I was in Ewe country, and I had an Ife interpreter, and they gave him a hard time. And his wife was with him, and she one day got up and she was gone. And they said she'd walked out to the road, which is a 6-hour walk, and got on a bus and went back to her tribal area because the people were just treating them so poorly. And I said, well, what is the difference? He said, it's obvious. I said, well, I'm sorry, I'm missing something. It's not obvious to me. I said, your language is almost the same. You guys look just alike. And he laughed. He said, look at me. He always said, Pastor Brooks. He said, look at me, Pastor Brooks. Don't I look different? I said, Daniel, actually you don't. He said, and he did this. I said, okay, what is it? He said, I have 3 scars. I said, okay. He said, they have 2. I said, that's it? And the Ife would, when a child was born, they would cut him here, here, and here, like whiskers. And the Ewe, they would cut him here and here and make scars. And I said, what are the scars about? He said, it's a symbol of our maturity. And I said, I don't get that either. I didn't know this. I had to learn this from an African. He said, as you get older, the scars move up your face. He said, when the scars get to your hairline, that means you're an elder. I said, and that's it? He said, yeah, we have 3 scars. They have 2. They're inferior. And I just thought, oh my gosh. But marking and stuff, that's why it says don't do that. But then it jumps right into don't eat certain things because it's abominable. Here we see the do's and don'ts. Like you can eat ox, sheep, goat, deer, gazelle, roebuck. I guess you can't eat the seers though. That was a joke. The wild goat, the ibex, the antelope, the mountain sheep. Every animal that parts the hoof and has the hoof cloven in 2 and choose the cud among the animals, you can eat those. Yet, those that chew the cud or have the hoof cloven, you shall not eat these: the camel, the hare, the rock badger, and the pig. And then you go over to the next place, you got birds you can eat. You can eat all kinds of birds, but you don't eat the vultures, the bearded vultures, the kite, the falcon, anything that eats dead animals. And so this makes sense. That's one of the things people said. It's really rather forward thinking, because the animals that you can eat are normally healthy. The animals he says don't eat are the ones that eat other things. They're carrying, or they carry diseases. Everybody talks about how pigs can carry trichinosis and stuff like that. And I know I was in northern Mexico, and I saw some Yaqui Indians, and they were in a village. And as we went by, I could very clearly see they had a armadillo upside down on the fire cooking it, and they were going to eat that armadillo, which I thought, that's just a rat in armor. But I was talking to one of the tour guides with us, and they said that's the problem. They get leprosy from armadillos, and leprosy is a big problem in northern Mexico because the Yaquis eat the armadillos. Armadillos carry leprosy. They've even brought it into America. So there's health rules that nobody knew and still didn't know. Because, I mean, God didn't say, you'll get leprosy. Well, they knew about leprosy, but they didn't know about trichinosis. You know, the biggest fear of that age was leprosy. It was cancer and AIDS all rolled into one. Because if you get leprosy, you know, you're going to die a horrible death. There's nothing you can do about it. So that was part of the problem. But here's what, nobody ever points this out. God tells them don't eat the unclean food, but if you turn back, there's a strange little verse in chapter 12. I can find it now, I probably lost it. In verse 22, he said, just as the gazelle of the deer is eaten, so you may eat of it. The unclean and the clean alike may eat of it. It's like, wait a minute. You can eat the unclean too? Only be sure you don't eat the blood, for the blood is the life. You shall not eat the life of the flesh. You shall eat it, you shall pour it on the earth like water. That strange little thing is talking about, you know, as I have commanded you, you may eat within your towns whenever you desire, just as the gazelle, the deer is eaten, so you may eat of the unclean and the clean alike may eat of it. Now, some people say, well, he's saying unclean people and clean people can eat it. But is he saying that, or is he really saying in your towns, you can eat what you want? The restrictions are in sacrifice. You cannot bring any of this unclean food as a sacrifice. You cannot eat it in the temple area or in the city of God. It's a bit confusing. It's almost like God is saying, you can, you know, as long as it's not an act of worship, you can eat a pig if you want to. Now, the Jews don't interpret that way, but trust me, even today, the strict Orthodox Jews, they don't eat pig or anything. Yeah. And it seems like we pick on the pig mostly. It's like, oh, I don't eat ham or bacon or, you know, any kind of pork product. It's interesting, and I was reading this, I was remembering in Israel, I think I ate the best there of any place I've ever eaten. And I didn't even think about it while I was there, because I mean, I used to be a major bacon fan and ham and eggs. I didn't eat any pork and didn't miss it at all because they had so much other good stuff to eat there. I'd go back there just to eat. It was just wonderful. The food, all the fresh vegetables, the fresh food they had, the fish, the various beef products they had. It was great. And I thought, if I said, Israelis seem to be healthier. When we were there, I didn't see a lot of overweight Jewish people. What I did see was a lot of people that looked like they were, you know, models. Guys walking around with washboard abs and muscles, and girls walking around with machine guns and muscles. And I think, well, is it because they served in the military for 2 years after high school, or is it because they've lived a good life of good food and eaten well? And it's like, maybe God knew what he's talking about. when he chose these people to follow his commandments, and his commandments create a healthier people. Right now, they're struggling because they all wanted to be healthy, and so they said take the vaccine. They all took it, like 87%, but they're still having a wave of COVID over there. But that has nothing to do with their diet, and I don't think they're dying from it, because it's just very rare you see somebody obese until they get like my age, you know. But I got a head start on obesity. I started like when I was 10. But they live such a life of good food, being in good shape and stuff like that. And I think, well, here's where it comes from. God is setting these people up for success in every aspect of their life. After that, and I'm really not going to go through all of the food problems and stuff. There's other practical things, like in chapter 12, verse 30. You think, well, that's not a law, but he says, take care that you be not ensnared to follow them. Well, what he's talking about is the Lord cut you off from the nations whom you dispossess and just dwell in their land. Talking about the Canaanite people, he says, take care you don't ensnare to follow them. Well, that's the warning that they should have listened to. But then he says, and on further, he says, do not inquire about their gods, saying, how did these nations serve their gods? He's saying, be careful you don't get curious about how they worship, because once you get curious, you're going to find out and you'll get drawn into it. And I thought, we have our old saying, curiosity killed the cat. Curiosity is another one of the tools of the devil. And we have to be careful. We get curious about something and say, oh, I want to check this out. Now, I'm not a good one to talk, I guess, because I told you last week that I sort of went on a spiritual sojourn looking for understanding. But that wasn't so much curiosity in the sense of I want to know what they're doing. I was looking to see what people do. I guess maybe it was because I was a Christian, but I began to question my faith. And I wondered, well, how do I know all these other faiths are not just as good, because I've never understood them? It sort of started in a comparative religion class, but then just went out and I started looking at these things. And some people do that and they get pulled into those things. I was a Christian and I believe that God, I really believe this, you may think I'm crazy, but I believe that when I accepted Christ, it's like he put a shield around me to where I could see the world, but I wasn't necessarily part of the world. I could choose to be in it. I could choose to sin, but it's like the Spirit of God was saying, this is what's there. See it, get away from it. Don't. And I avoided a lot of things. I'm not saying I'm goody two-shoes, but other than my infatuation with Twinkies and donuts, I never smoked. I never drank. Now, I tried it all because my brother insisted that I drink every beer known to man. And I would taste it, and I said, Brad, this stuff tastes the same, and it's terrible. He said, oh, no, I love it. And he'd name off the great beers, and he'd get liquor, and he said, try this, is great. I said, I taste like rubbing alcohol. I bought a pack of cigarettes one time. It lasted me for an entire month because I'd smoke a half cigarette every afternoon at a friend's house, and I never could get through one because they'd laugh at me because I'm sitting there coughing. I thought, why do you guys do this? They all smoked. I said, I just don't get it, guys. They said, try a pipe. So I got a pipe, and I smoked Paladin tobacco, coughed my head off, and finally I realized, I said, guys, you know what I really like about this pipe? They said, the tobacco? I said, no, I like chewing on the end of it. I get nervous. So I would chew on a pipe. I never smoked a pipe. And all those things you say, well, no, Brooks, that's just because you're weird. I think it's because the Holy Spirit was leading me through my life to say, you could do this if you want to, but it's a waste of your time. He didn't talk loud enough when it came to sugar, though, I guess. Debbie and I talk about my addiction is to sugar. And I guess I am. I hate to admit it, But, oh, I'm sorry. I admit it. But Debbie's been telling me. But I still think that Mountain Dew and peanut M&Ms could cure certain diseases. But I haven't proven that yet. But God is telling these people, be healthy. Our parents said, be healthy, but, Dad's sitting there saying, smoking 3 packs a day, be healthy. I thought, Dad, you're not really a great model at this. But, I was there. I have to tell you, when the football team practiced in the summertime, we've had the August practice, we would practice in the morning. We all piled into cars. We drove into town to the Pizza Hut, which was really called the Pizza Inn, I'm sorry. And we sat at this table. We're all sitting there, sweaty, nasty football players. We had ordered pizza like crazy. Everybody at the table ordered a pitcher of beer. And the waitress came to me, she said, and you? And they all laughed and said, he'll have a pitcher of Pepsi. And they all laughed at me because everybody drank beer except me. I drank a pitcher of Pepsi, the whole pitcher. But I got used to it. Everybody made fun of me because I didn't do any of the stuff. And when I started smoking marijuana, I didn't even go with them. Had another friend, he would just grab a handful of pills out of and just take them. So I grew, well, this is the 60s, remember now, so it was sort of the drug craze. But I think God saved me from a lot of mistakes. Obviously not all of them, but he saved me from a lot of them, just like he's saving these people. And it worked. They, like me, the only mistakes they made were the sins they chose to commit. You know, if we follow God's rules, we don't have such a bad life. He goes on, he's talking about the dietary stuff. We'll talk more about that. But he gives them that little dig there about curiosity. Like, be careful what you're curious about. And you look at some of the stories, and look at the parables of Jesus, particularly the prodigal son. Here's a kid who was curious, left home, and was wrecked, and yet God took him back. All of those are about God's salvation and God's grace. It's the central message that I'm always telling you that runs through the Bible in various ways. God is trying to save us from ourselves. In chapter 13, he gets into another area, which I think is interesting. He says, if a prophet or a dreamer of dreams arises among you and gives you a sign or a wonder, and the sign or the wonder that he tells you comes to pass, and if he says, let us go after other gods which you have not known, and let us serve them, you shall not listen to the words of the prophet or the dreamer of dreams. For the Lord your God is testing you to know whether you love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul. There's an interesting point about this. And again, I got to work backwards. I hope I can find it. Oh, where did it go? It's talking about prophets. It's way over in chapter 18. And in chapter 18, around verse 20, there it says, but the prophet who presumes to speak a word in the name that I have not commanded to speak, and who speaks in the name of other gods, that same prophet shall die. And verse 22, when a prophet speaks in the name of the Lord, if the word does not come to pass or come true, that is the word that the Lord has not spoken. The prophet has spoken, and presumptuously you need not be afraid of him. This is the biblical test of a prophet. To put it in simple phrases, if a prophet prophesies something and it doesn't happen, he's not a prophet. So don't listen to him. Over here where it's talking about the prophet, God says, I'm using this as a test because he puts a little twist on it. He says, if this guy gives a sign or a wonder, and the sign or wonder tells you comes to pass. So in other words, people think, well, wait a minute, where does this guy get the power to give a prophecy and it happened and it's true, and yet God says don't follow him if he tries to lead you to other gods? I mean, it seemed pretty obvious, but the problem with that, a lot of people think, well, how do these false prophets have power? How are they able to do this? Without getting into, well, I am going to get into a long explanation. There's no other way to do it. It goes hand in hand, and again, I got to jump forward, folks. I'm sorry to drag you around. It goes hand in hand with chapter 18, around verse 9. And verse 9 through 14 is a section of what he calls abominations. These are things that you got to watch out for. And what it says, when you come into the land the Lord your God has given you, you shall not learn to follow the abominable practices of those nations. There shall not be found among you anyone who burns his son or his daughter as an offering, that's to Moloch, who practices divination, tells fortunes, interprets omens, or a sorcerer, or a charmer, a medium, a necromancer, or one who inquires of the dead. Whoever goes after these things is an abomination to the Lord, because the abomination of the Lord your God is driving them out before you. God is saying, people who do this stuff are abominable. And it goes right back hand in hand with this. And you think, well, how did this prophet or dreamer of dreams give you a sign and a wonder that was true? And God is saying that they have certain power. Now, I've told this to people a long time, and usually they don't believe me. But Revelation says in the end time, Satan is going to come and he's going to have power. The power he has is the power that God gives him, though. And people think, well, wait a minute, why is God giving Satan power? And it is sort of hard to explain. Some people, I say it and they get confused, but God, we tell the story. The Catholic Church is to blame for this, that Satan rose up against God and there was a war in the heavens, and that a third of the angels were cast out and they became demons here on earth, and they're fighting against God. The Catholics went as far as to say that there's a thing called the well of souls, and if Satan can get more souls, he can overcome God. Well, that's not true. I think what they've done is they mix in other cultures' mythology. And so a lot of people think that there's still this battle going on, between demons and God and the people of God. Well, it's not so much a battle. It's more like pest. There are demons in the world. If you don't believe that, then I'm sorry, you must not believe the Bible, because it's all through the Bible. There's demonic presences. They are spiritual demons. They are not physical, except when they possess a person. A demon is an angel is a spirit, God is a spirit, those who worship him in the spirit. God manifests himself as a human being through Jesus Christ. God does not become people and walk around. People like to put that in movies. If a person is speaking for God, that person is an angel who has been given a physical body. And that does happen. Demons do not get physical bodies. They have to possess someone to get it. But you will see angels appear in physical form in the Bible. And that is when God has willed that to happen. It's very rare, though, because usually it's a spiritual thing. You will not see demons appear in physical form unless they have possessed a human being and taken over their body, and that's real. Now, I don't know if you've ever heard this. I don't know if you believe it, but trust me on this one. What he's referring to here is prophets who tell you the truth. These are people that are possessed. And they're possessed, as it says in chapter 17, and there's very different words for them. The key phrase in there, for me, is mediums. Y'all know what a medium is? Okay. If you go to a palm reader today, or some of these psychic healers, they will all tell you that they're Christians, or they never say, "Oh, I have a demon that tells me everything." No, they have a spirit, and it's interesting. They seem to always want an old Indian that was a little odd, And Bill and Bill, he would look at me like, "What do I do? It's my wife." I thought, "Burn her at the stake." But there was something to it. It always bothered me. I thought, how is there power in this? And then I began, remember those television shows where some guy would be there and he's telling people, "I just talked to your Aunt Rhodey and she said you left the car keys under the cushion." "Oh, I've been looking for those." And they'd say things that people just freak out and say, "That's amazing. How did you know that?" And I wondered too. I thought, how do they know that? How do these people seem to know what's going on? And the answer is in the Bible. It's not plain, though. You have to understand it. And there was a guy named Dr. Walter Martin who was a specialist. He used to be a Catholic priest in charge of exorcism. He left the Catholic Church because he felt like they were doing it all wrong. But he studied spirituality, and some of his books made sense, and I read them, and it does make sense, because he found out when he was exorcising demons from people, he said, a lot of times it doesn't work. And that confuses people because they have a little ritual and they say, "Oh, you say the words, it works." Why wouldn't it work? And he said, it's quite simple. The people don't want to get rid of the demon. They like the demon. He told of an exorcism of a child that had grown up with a demonic spirit that was like an animal that he talked to, and it was an imaginary friend, but he said, we found out it was a demonic spirit. He said that he wouldn't let it go for a long time. It took them years to exorcise the kid because he saw it as an imaginary friend when in fact it was a demon. And what they do is, and demonic spirits work this way, they don't come to scare you. They come to embrace you and tell you the truth. a lot of truths. I mean, how else are you deceived if not with the truth? People think, well, I'm deceived with a lie. No, you figure a lie out. But when the truth happens, just like here, these people did things and said things that were true, but they were trying to take you away from God. And that's just what he says. If they say something that's true and then say you should worship another God, they are not from me. And that's just what we see. There are people today that communicate with spirits that are demon spirits, but the demon never says, ooh, I'm a demon, let me talk to you. It doesn't happen. They come and say, well, I'm your Aunt Rhody, from Pennsylvania. You never met me, but I love you, and stuff. The other thing, in Hinduism, they talk about reincarnation. Reincarnation is just another form of demonic influence, because people say, well, I'm having a past life experience. No, you're not. A demon who lived 1,000 years ago can tell you everything that happened 1,000 years ago, and you think it happened to you. Reincarnation is of the devil. All this stuff that we think is so cool is demonic, and a lot of times we don't realize we're dealing with demons. That's why he talks about all these people in chapter 18, because they come at you in different ways. I'm jumping way ahead, but he talks about divination. That's fortune telling. Do you know anybody that tells the future? You ever met anybody? Well, good for you.
We stay away from those people.
Yeah, we try to stay away from that. But how many of you read your horoscope?
Can't say they've done that.
Yes. I mean, just out of curiosity, I'd always look and say, what's my horoscope say? And it'll say stuff, and it's true. I thought, oh my gosh, I am handsome and wise. But that is a form of divination. And people, we've talked about astrologers and stuff, it seems so harmless, and in a way it is, but it can lead you further and further into the occult practices. And you have people that read your palm, your tea leaves, the entrails of your goat. They'll read everything and say, this is this and this. They can look at a cloud and say, well, that cloud's coming after you. They look at the stars, and the stars rise at certain times when you're born. And the strange thing about it is, it seems to be right. It's like, wow. The one that kills me is the zodiac signs that tell you your personality. Has everybody read your zodiac sign and said, yeah, that's me? It always is, because a lot of it is self-fulfilling prophecy. You want it to be you. Except the one that kills me, it says, and she will do, and I thought, wait a minute, I thought this was about me, not some girl. Maybe I'm a girl. I didn't know it. Omens, same thing as divination. People who look, now my grandmother had the witchy ways, and she knew omens. And she said, you got the witchy ways, boy, because you can hear what people think. Grandma was interesting, but I won't go into that. Sorcerers, those are people who just actually do magic. Charmers, that's me. Charmers are not charming people. It's people who use items to sway you, and you can have a charm. That's where we get the idea of charm. A medium is someone, exactly what it says. They go between the dead and the living. And they exist. And if Saul went to see the witch of Endor, and he called up Samuel, and everybody says, oh, that proves that you can do that. No, it proves that Saul was demented at the moment. He was tricked, because witches can contact spirits, and spirits imitate the dead. And people say, well, how did they know that I'd lost my car keys? My aunt was the only one who knew that. No, they're there. They're here. They're all around us all the time. We don't see them. Why? They're spiritual beings. 1/3 of the heavenly host is on earth. How many is that? Anybody know? Is it 30? Is it 30 quadrillion, zillion, billion? Well, they're everywhere. And if a demon is in Cleveland and a demon is in New York, and the guy in Cleveland asks the demon what's happening in New York, they communicate with one another. That's how mediums know stuff. Demons communicate, and they say, this guy's brother just died. Tell him that. Oh, your brother just died. What? Because it's true. This guy is so wise. No, he's demonic. but they don't come at you with pitchforks and fangs. That's our legendary stuff. And by the way, that's from Satan, because part of Satan's deception is to make you think that the demons are evil, so that when the demon comes to you that's good, you think, well, that's not a demon. Because demons are evil. They have fangs and pitchforks. This demon is nice. It's a little old lady, or it's an ancient Indian who, never went on the warpath and is a good medicine man and tells me all this earth stuff and that, climate's changing. All this stuff is part of what we call New Age thinking, when in fact, it's old age revival. It's going back and pulling paganism into today's world. So much of what we see today, believe it or not, is literally the revision or the revival of paganism. We call it New Age and all this stuff. It's not, it's pagan. The problem is that as Christians, we haven't been taught it, for one thing. I mean, and I know because I've been teaching it for 75 is when I first really got into this big time with my youth groups, with the churches. And what I thought, I'm like the guy who runs in with a cure to the disease and they beat you up because it's like, you're crazy. But wait, I have a cure. They don't want the cure. People don't want to know this because it's taking something away from them that they think is theirs, a relationship. The other thing, Satan uses our pride with this, and he makes us feel like we're special. It's like, did you talk to a demon? No, I have a medium. Don't you? Oh, well, yeah, I'm going to get one. Where are they? People take pride in having certain power. What does the Bible say we should do? Should we be proud or should we be humble? Christians, humble yourselves in the sight of the Lord and he will lift you up, not some demon entity. And yet we're seeking status in our own lives. Believe it or not, I think we live in an age where people have the lowest opinion of themselves that's ever been, and yet they convince themselves they don't. They convince themselves that they're superior to everyone around them. And narcissism is on the rise like a forest fire in a dry wood. Narcissists are people who start off insecure and then build a legend in their own mind. And we're seeing that more and more. It's that insecurity that Satan uses to say, you're good, you're great, and I love you. And suddenly I think, this is God talking, when it's the counterfeit God. It's Satan pretending to be God. We see the final one here, the necromancer. Do you know what a necromancer is? Necromancer. Anybody ever use that term a lot? It's because it's a broad term. You
Anything
do?
with the dead.
What?
Anything with the dead.
Yeah, necromancy is dealing with the dead, and it's why it's a broad term. And I don't want to gross you out, but mediums are necromancers because they speak to the dead. So that makes them a necromancer. But there are others that are necromancers because they like to be around the dead. The ultimate perversion of necromancers are people who like to have relationships with the dead. You think, that's impossible. Unfortunately, it's not impossible. It happens. There's so much evil happens in this world, you would not believe it. And we don't believe it because we don't want to know it. Debbie and I were talking about this the other day. We were talking about the idea of the Luciferian religion that's on the rise again. The key point of Luciferianism is torturing children to death to get their adrenaline up so that you can take their blood and inject it in you and have sex with children. Pedophilia is the worst thing that's happening, and it's being kept quiet, and it makes you wonder, why are they keeping this quiet? During Trump's administration, we actually saved more children from pedophiles than has ever happened. And Trump's out of office, and it's almost stopped now. You don't hear of it anymore. It's like, why was there a focus of it then, and now there's not, and there wasn't before? Why are there so many children missing? Children go missing all the time. It's like, oh, that's terrible. Pass the butter. It's like they don't care. Children are under assault all the time. Satan's primary target, by the way, is children. Corrupt them or kill them. That's his plan. You know, you and I, Satan does not assault us as much as we think he does because he doesn't care about us. Number one, we go to church, we're Christians. Number two, we may be inactive, so we're not bothering him at all. But a child has potential. Kill the potential. That's how you kill the world. And the stuff that we find out about they're doing to children, bodies. I'm not going to go into it, but just understand that. Look at what's on television. Look at what's going on in the world. Children are the focus. Kill them. That's what he wants.
They're in their schools, their young schools now. They don't really care about the universities anymore.
There was a story, or there was a clip on the computer this week where people were going into school boards complaining about the books that their kids had, and they were basically gay porn in one situation. Another one was writing assignments that the teacher had given her class, and it was stuff like, if you were thinking about suicide, how would you do it? If you were thinking about killing someone, how would you do it? If you ever thought about killing your parents, how would you do it? Those were the essay topics. And you're thinking, who does this? Pedophiles do it. What was that principal we saw the other day that was arrested?
Was arrested for
pedophilia in school.
attacking.
I mean, it's pretty bad, folks, but it's all right here. The other thing that he mentions is not in, well, maybe in your translation, some translations have the word soothsayer. Do you know what a soothsayer is?
Predicts the future.
Makes predictions. But the original soothsayer, that word doesn't necessarily mean predicts. Sooth is from an ancient dialect, Middle Eastern dialect, which means truth. So a soothsayer is a truth sayer, someone who tells the truth. Now, that's a part of the deception of Satan. Satan, what did Jesus say? Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, the way, and the life. Satan comes and says, I'm the truth, I'm the way, and I'm the life. I'll tell you just the truth, and I'll lead you down the right path and give you eternal life. He counterfeits Jesus all the time. That's a sign of Satan that Christians often miss, because they're looking for Jesus and they're finding Satan, who is a perfect imitation. And when you see it, you may not understand it, because you have to ask God for the wisdom and the discernment, and that's the key. How many of you have ever prayed a prayer for discernment?
Okay.
Yeah.
Constantly now.
Especially now. We all need to be praying, Lord, give me the power of discernment so that I can see what is before me. Because if not, what's before us, if you ever experience it, you'll be tempted to say, I don't ever want to see that again. Because when you see Satan and what he's doing, it ain't pretty. Now, I know I'm starting to sound like, the know-it-all. I don't know it all, folks. But my ministry has led me down a path that taught me a lot. When it comes to demonic stuff, I thought, this is what Satan, it's not zombies, but it's people that are under the influence of demonic spirits. I saw it everywhere. I can tell you some interesting stories when the TV came back on. But I will tell you this, because we got to go. A missionary came to me one day, and it was interesting, the experience I had with missionaries, because I didn't know what God was doing in my life, but they did somehow. A missionary came to me one day, and he said, Brooks, he said, we had a mission meeting, the 3 missionary families, and we prayed about it. Your name kept coming up. I said, what did I do? He said, oh, no. We want you to go over into Benin and preach at a church there. I said, you got 12 preachers here. I'm supposed to be an entertainer. I wanted to be a witness, but they had me down as an entertainer. He said, well, we saw that, but your name kept coming up. We think you're supposed to preach at this church in Benin. Well, Benin was the next country over, so Sunday morning we got up early, and this missionary drove me to Benin. I went into a church full of people. I had to interpret through 4 different languages, so my sermon could only be 15 minutes, and that made it 45 minutes already. I had no idea what I was going to do. I never preached a sermon, particularly in 4 different languages. And I got up and I talked about how God wanted Christians to stand up and be Christians. I talked about how maybe it means rededicating your life, maybe it means rededicating your church. And that's about all I said. I didn't give a great story or a poem or anything. No object lessons. I just said, God wants you to get your life in focus. Something like that. I don't even know what I said. I didn't write it down. I was just standing there in front of a room full of people looking at me. And when I finished, I said, Mal, if anybody would like to be a Christian or if you'd like to rededicate your life, he said, come forward. Everybody came forward. And I'm thinking, I turned to my interpreter and said, what did I say? He said, you said the right thing. I said, but what are they doing? He said, they're doing just what you said. We left, and they turned it over to the guys that were the pastor and the elders. We got in the van, and this guy was grinning. I said, what just happened in there? I said, I'm sorry. I said, I don't know really what I was saying. He said, Brooks, he said, we have been praying for this church for a year because they had lost all interest. They weren't coming. They weren't doing anything. They were going back to their old ways. And we've been praying and praying for this church. We've preached here and we've been here and we couldn't do anything. But when we prayed about it, your name came up. And I thought, well, that was a mistake. And he said, and that's exactly what we've been wanting to see in that church. That church turned around in one day. And I'm sitting there thinking, did I do that? I thought, I didn't have the slightest idea what I was doing. But it's a great testimony of what God can do with a willing person, because I was willing to do it. Even though I didn't know what I was doing, I was willing to try. And so God used my words to turn that church around. Stuff like that. When God, you may not even know you have a gift, but God knows what you're capable of, or maybe you're not capable of. God will go before you. Just like the Israelites going to go into Jordan, they didn't have the army or the training, and they're going to fight army after army after army and defeat them, because God says, I will go before you. God went before me that day. As we came back from Togo, before we left the last day, this missionary says, hop in the van, I got to take you somewhere. We were in Lomé, the capital city. We drove down to a place and he pulled up at a corral. I may have told you this story before and I'm going to be brief. But inside that corral, there were huts with men standing and tables. He said, go in there. I said, aren't you coming? He said, I ain't going in there. And he had this ominous look. I said, why are you sending me in there? He said, God wants you in there. I thought, oh my goodness. I went in. It was a fetish market. Everybody in there was a fetish priest. That's basically an animistic priest. And I walked around, and one of them finally called me over, and they all watched me. It was like something out of a scary movie, but I thought, something's going on here. And I had an encounter with a priest who showed me God and tried to get me to follow his God, and showed me letters from Americans that he had cast spells on people, killing people and destroying families and marriages, all kinds of stuff. And they'd sent him thank you letters because they had requested it. But he got mad at me because I wasn't impressed. I wasn't afraid. And when I wasn't afraid of him, and I don't know why I wasn't afraid, because I should have been afraid, I left, and they all feel the power of Satan all around you. And it's almost like dirty hands are touching you, and yet you don't feel like they can get at you. There's something between. And I always tell people that's the Holy Spirit. You know, Satan would love to destroy you, but he can't. I wished I had time to bore you more. We'll do a little bit more on this chapter, because there's a lot of things that God is telling us that we need to know that we just don't know today because we haven't asked the right questions. And this is one of these practices. But I'll tell you some more next week. We got to pray now because I'm way over time again. But let's pray. Heavenly Father, I thank you and praise you for this day. And Lord, for all the blessings you've given us. And I thank you, God, that you're here with us, that your presence can be felt, and that you're trying to lead us in the right direction. Give us the wisdom and the eyes to follow you, Lord. We have mentioned several requests for prayer earlier today. Lord, we turn these into your hand, and may your will be done in their lives. May your will be done in our lives, Lord, so that we can be the people that you want us to be. Be with us now as we go through this week. And Lord, just bless these people in this classroom. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. I got it.